Today, I want to take a look if Bryson Graham should take one more swing before training camp because the free agent market is kind of weird right now, right? A month ago, the Chicago Bulls had the room exception, and it didn't feel like there was a ton of power in that. But now, at this point of the offseason, there is a level of power with having the room exception that Chicago Bulls do have, with Bennedict Mathurin probably being the biggest name available. But there are also some other names that the Bulls could take a look at as far as Cam Whitmore, Bruce Brown, Ochai Agbaji, and one that I don't agree with, but a lot of you guys have asked about, is Cam Thomas. We're going to talk about it all and more, plus dive into the mailbag right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. So the Chicago Bulls have their $9.4 million room exception left, and that may have more value than what it had at any other part of the offseason, right? The Bulls, of course, have the room to make one more move with the free agent market drying up for several of the players out there. And there are some useful players out there that fit the Bulls' needs. And we'll talk about what those needs are, right? And when you look at the fact that a lot of teams in the NBA, there's not a lot of meaningful money out there left anymore, right? Well, Chicago doesn't need to force a move. And as we know and we've talked about, Bryson Graham has prioritized flexibility above all. So there's still the most likely scenario, and I want to be clear here, this is not to gas it. The most likely scenario is the Bulls are going to go into at least training camp and probably the start of the season with that 15th roster spot open. They may not fill that at all. And so I want to be clear on that, right? But the key, if the Bulls do want to, is adding a player that adds opportunity without sacrificing the long-term flexibility that this team has clearly prioritized, right? And so when you look at it, we know what the needs are for the Bulls. They need more shooting, and they need another bench scorer, right? So there are a number of players that could fit that mold. And, of course, the number one player we're going to go to is the one that's been rumored the most, and that's Bennedict Mathurin. Now, Mathurin is in an interesting place because, while he is probably the best player of the players that we're going to mention here, he's also the hardest decision, right? Ben Mathurin has a clear talent fit with his ability to score off the bench. I know that there's defensive woes and all that type of stuff that people are going to bring up, right? But he brings youth, he brings proven scoring, and he knows how to create when possessions break down, and that's something that we don't have a lot on the bench right now. We have some players that can create for others, but not a lot that can create for themselves, and that's it, right? And he could easily slide into the six-man scoring type role right behind Norman Powell. And long-term, he could potentially become Norman Powell's replacement or stick around and be a bench scorer for the Bulls for a long time, especially if Dalen Swain or if the Bulls find another kind of player that fits into that starting role mode, right? He is a restricted free agent, and the Bulls' exception is not necessarily big enough for an offer that the Clippers may not match, but sign and trades are still a possibility. We heard that, the Isaac Okoro thing could be there, draft compensation in the form of second-round picks, right? But I would still clear of the $20 to $25 million that reportedly he wanted annually. That money is not out there for him unless another team draws up a sign and trade, which is always a possibility. And if they do, there's that possibility that the sign and trade could fit for another team, and they could get that $20 to $25 million. But it's very unlikely here in Chicago, right? Ben Mathurin is the best player that's probably available of the players that we're going to talk, but may also be the player that's the hardest to acquire, and especially while you may be able to acquire some players that aren't necessarily as good as him, but have some upside swing in regards to that. So the problem with Ben Mathurin that you're looking at is the money. Like if Ben Mathurin was unrestricted free agent, with where we are right now, he'd probably have to settle for a $9 or $10 million contract to come over to the team. That's just the reality of where he is and how the market is dictated. But because he's restricted and the Clippers still have the right to match that contract, even with the moves that they made, that's where it's going to be. A sign and trade would be needed. The next player to talk about is a guy that hasn't officially been waived yet, but there was rumors as late as last night that the Cleveland Cavaliers are considering waiving Cam Whitmore, who they just acquired as part of the overall Peyton Watson trade that was initially a 3-team trade that I think expanded to a 5-team trade, right? And the thing with Cam Whitmore, I'm going to say this right now. If Cam Whitmore is waived by the Cleveland Cavaliers, he instantly becomes probably my favorite guy on this list. Not because he's the best, not because it's for sure that he's going to hit either, right? I want to be clear. I don't think that Cam Whitmore is a for sure going to hit and be a big time scorer or anything in the league. But it's the possibility of what he could turn into, on top of the fact that he is also a player that has some scoring upside, that's super young at 22 years old, right? Still basically scratching the surface of what he could be. He provides some legit size at 6'6", 230 pounds, that can play the 2, the 3, a little bit of undersized 4 as well if you want to do that. You shouldn't need him to do that on this team. And while Cam Whitmore came into the league his rookie season averaging 12 points per game on 45% shooting from the field and 36% shooting from 3, there's been a steady decline shooting from 3 since then. He started 35% in his second year, 28.6% last year with the Washington Wizards, albeit he only played 21 games. But Cam Whitmore is a player that I look at and I say, if you're going to take a shot at a player, right? And again, he's not going to be guaranteed a spot in the rotation. He's going to have to compete right along with Dalen Swain, Jalen Sellers, all those guys, right? But a former first-round pick just 3 years ago, he's flashed some really good scoring upside, even with the opportunities that he's had been very inconsistent. He has the physicality tools, right? And there is no market for him. If he is waived by the Cleveland Cavaliers, there is no market for him. Chicago can offer him a chance to earn minutes, a chance to develop, and to rebuild his value, even with it not being a long-term hit. And if he does hit, Chicago may have found a young scoring wing for almost nothing if he ends up working out. And if he doesn't, you move on, right? Cam Whitmore is the type of upside swing that rebuilding teams are supposed to take a shot on. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to work out, but you take a shot on young, cheap, talented players that were former first-round picks. I would not be mad at Cam Whitmore if Bryson Graham decided to take a shot on Cam Whitmore. Again, may work out, it may not. But again, it's a low-cost option here. Then the next player, the player that I know people are going to be like, Haize, oh my God, why is he on the list? And I agree with this. But a lot of people have asked about him, and you guys know, when enough people ask about it, and the reason why I don't, right, because there's so much negativity in the Chicago Bulls content creation space right now, is that I try, when I know my opinion is not going to be the most positive and it's not something that I don't have to cover, I try not to. But a lot of you guys have asked, why shouldn't the Bulls take a shot at Cam Thomas? Now, you guys know, I'm going to shoot it straight. I'm going to give the things that could work. I'm going to give the things that I have a little bit concerned about. The fact is, when you look at Cam Thomas, this guy is still very young and has proven that he can score at the NBA level. Now, the question becomes about, can he do it in a winning scenario and situation, or is he just a chucker, right? He's 24 years old, 25-ish. I think he'll be 25 by October, by around the same start of the season. But this is a guy that's averaged 22 and 24 points per game in the 2023-24 and the 2024-25 season. Now, it's been a bit of a decline since then. Last year in 25-26, only 15 points for Brooklyn. They clearly had moved on. And then Milwaukee only averaged 10 points before he was eventually waived, right? And so the thing is that you're looking at somebody who fits the most mold of, that's a bucket off the bench. Cam Thomas could do that. And the level of degrees which he's going to be able to do it at and success, that's where you weigh at, right? But this is a guy that I think you wouldn't have to reorganize your offense. He can score off ball without being ball dominant. He doesn't need to have the ball in his hands a lot to do what he does. You look at even the seasons where he averaged 24 and 22 points per game, he took 18 shots on a tanking team and shot 44% from the field basically both years and 36% from 3. So again, he's a guy that has some upside. But the fact of the matter, I think, is when you look at this, right, if you simplify his role, can he still score? And that would be the job of Tiago Splitter to feel like if he can do that by simplifying his role and saying, listen, this is what you do. If you don't do this, you're going to sit your ass down. But at the same time, there's concerns with defense. There's concerns with efficiency. There's concerns with ball movement. There's concerns with winning impact. And there's the reason why his price would be so low is that this guy's been an unrestricted free agent since he was waived by the Milwaukee Bucks, and nobody has bid on him. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's still not potential and talent there, but it does mean that right now, nobody really wants to take a shot at Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas may very well end up being one of those players that's to go play overseas, mature, and then come back to the NBA. But again, I'll say this, because the price would be so low, and you probably can get him for not even all of your room exception and make it a non-guaranteed deal, I think that you may want to take a shot at that. Like, if you're going to take a shot on Cam Thomas on a non-guaranteed deal, a training camp deal, and basically say, listen, if you come in here, you play well, you focus, you score the way that we need to, we have a role for you. If you don't, we're going to cut you. I wouldn't necessarily hate that. I would still have I'd wonder like, okay, why, right? But at the same time, again, like I said, I can't say it for one player, then not say it for another. When you're at the place you're at right now in a rebuild, you take a shot on young players that have some upside if it's low risk. And that's what Cam Thomas would be. Now, I don't know if there's things in the locker room. I'm not that ingrained in what happened with Brooklyn Nets or the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't know if that's there. If there's there, then don't even worry about that. Again, it's not the guy that I would go after. Personally, I wouldn't want anything to do with Cam Thomas. But at the same time, if Bryson Graham looked at it and they interviewed him and brought him in, I guess we'll see. Then the last guy on the list, only veteran on the list is Bruce Brown. And you guys know I've been talking about Bruce Brown a lot. Bruce Brown is not an upside swing, but he's a stabilizing swing, right? He can play different types of positions. He brings championship experience. He brings experience of being a high-level role player on a winning team. He can defend multiple spots. He can handle the ball some. He can shoot some, right? He's definitely going to take and hit those open threes. He's not the scorer. Like, doesn't fit the mold of go out and get you a bucket, but he could be helpful for the development of Dalen Swain, Rob Dillingham, right? Jalen Sellers. He could be good for the development of those guys, right? He doesn't feel just the strong scoring need, but he does bring some shooting and some things. It's not the exciting move, but it could be the move that ends up making sense and adds some veteran leadership to your team. And then the actual last guy that I'll talk about is Ochai Agbaji. Now, Agbaji would be a very quiet flyer on a player, right? He's not the star swing. Anything like that. He's only 26 years old. He's a former lottery pick. He's a low usage player, right? When you look at it as well, he's athletic. He can defend some. He doesn't need the ball. And he has shown that he can be a decent spot up shooter in the past, right? This is more of bench depth and an opportunity. And I think at the right price, you give him a opportunity to compete in camp. If it works out, cool. If not, you cut him, right? Like, I wouldn't be mind at it. Like, Ochai Agbaji is what could be a sneaky swing option here for the Chicago Bulls. Another player that's looking to kind of a reclamation project in a way, and you can give him an opportunity in training camp. But like I said, if he becomes a distraction in the locker room, doesn't work out, doesn't do what you need him to do, you cut his ass, you move the hell on, right? And that's just what it comes down to for Ochai Agbaji. Like, a career 7-point per game scorer. He's been in the league since 2022-23. He's never shot the ball overly effectively from three, outside a little bit of a stretch with Toronto in 24-25, where he did shoot at 39.9% from three, taking 4 of those per game. But again, another kind of swing move that could be interesting. It could not be. But that's it. I think the market has given Bryson Graham some leverage. And if he does want to use it on taking a shot on the upside guy leading into training camp, then you do it. Like, we've done that before. We've seen it happen before. And sometimes it doesn't amount to much, but sometimes maybe you do find somebody that can turn into a little bit of a gem for you. So we'll see. The longer the market drags on for these guys, the more that Chicago's patience could end up getting them somebody that's an upside swing for little to no risk at all. And I guess we'll see what happens with that one. But with that said, okay, let's go ahead and get out of this one, man. Let's get into the voicemails for today. Let me know what you guys think about those options down below. Let's go ahead and get into the voicemails. By the way, if you guys are if you're out here and you are at Bulls Fest, go and find me if you're watching this by the time you watch this. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into the voicemails for today, man. This first voicemail that we got, this one's from Sean.
What's up, Haize? Sean calling. I'm actually calling because I just got done listening to the Cousins podcast with T-Mac and Vince Carter, and they had Modest on there. And something that stuck out to me is last season when Modest was talking his shit to Luka and Luka cooked him, Modest said that in the media he gave the politically correct answer, but Modest is waking up for them Laker games versus Luka because Luka acted like he didn't know who he was. I like that Modest talk shit. To me, as a basketball player, when I play, I talk shit. And sometimes when you talk shit, you get hit or you lose. Sometimes when you talk shit, you're the big dog on campus. I like the aggressiveness. I like the tenacity. I want Modest to keep being Modest. I want to see Modest and Caleb be this forward tandem to lead the Bulls into the future. Like, to be completely honest, I'm so gassed about this season. I'm not even paying attention to Packer football. My wife is going crazy with the amount of Chicago Bulls takes and things that I'm talking about because she wants me to talk about football. I'm not ready to talk about football. It's See red. It's Chicago Bulls. Let's go. I'm ready for the season. Peace.
I love hearing that Modest said that he was going to take it to Luka Doncic. For those that don't remember, Modest Buzelis talked some shit to Luka. Luka went off, and then he said, I probably won't talk to him again. Well, on the podcast, he said this, right? And this just happened the other day. Guys talk a lot of shit, but that's just, how I was raised to play basketball. Then he started baking me, bro, like 12 in a row. I was like, I don't care. Keep doing it. Like, he kept scoring. Like, we'll see if you can keep scoring. At the half, I have 20. He has 22 at the half. So I'm chilling. I'm right back at my boy. Yeah, so I end with like 23. He ends with like 50. I was saying I'm probably not going to trash talk him again, but really, I don't care. Like, I'm going to do it again. I need my get back. And I love that mindset from Modest Buzelis. Like, Modest needs to realize and understand that in this league, you can't back down from anybody because then they're going to always come at you. If you want respect in this league, you don't back down. And I'm glad that, that's part of the maturity. That's part of the evolution of Modest Buzelis. And let's see what he does with it next year. I love, if a little bit of a rivalry builds between Modest and Luka, I don't mind that at all. All right, let's get into the next voicemail, man. This one's from Unc Vaughn.
What's going on, Bulls Nation? This is Vaughn. I know I'm normally Mr. Doom and Gloom, but this is kind of actually an optimistic call. Before I called, I took a look at the NBA, obviously just the entire league, the all 30 teams. And I think one thing we're forgetting in terms of optimism for this Bulls team is the West. This is super optimistic, but I saw about 7 or 8 teams in the West that we could be better than. And I'm being honest. I'm sorry. Teams like Phoenix and Portland and that kind of stuff, and then obvious teams, like Memphis, and the Kings we're going to be better than. And then when you look at Utah, they've clearly passed us up on paper. So, there's kind of a mixed bag there. But then obviously the top of the West, no way. But we're going to play each of those teams twice, obviously, as opposed to playing teams in the East 3 or 4 times. So that's the problem. But when I look at, holistically, and I look at the entire league, the Bulls aren't quite down as far as I thought they were. And they're definitely not the 26th worst team in the league. Again, in the East, just to be completely honest, outside of Milwaukee and the Nets, I can't really say that they're better than anybody, really. But I kind of take that back. Charlotte, I don't know why they're getting so much love. I'm not scared of the Knuckle dude or Brandon Miller that much, or Kobe White. And then again, the Bulls always seem to play the Hawk stuff. So I think Atlanta can still go either way, but they did make some good improvements. And then there's just that upper tier that the Bulls don't even have a prayer to really play with. So again, looking at this from, like I said, a holistic standpoint in the entire league, Haize had a show kind of where you rank the Bulls or, where do you think they're at. So that's more or less what this call pertains to. But again, big picture, but I will say this about the East, and this is what's crazy is even a team like Washington, let's really look at Washington. They have guys that have actually done it before, whether it be AD and Trae Young. And think about Trae Young, he gets a lot of hate. But the crazy thing is this dude, probably no older than Josh Giddey, took the Hawks to the Eastern Conference Finals, if I'm not mistaken. Now, let's keep this real. If Josh Giddey took the Bulls to the Eastern Conference Finals, most of y'all would erect a damn statue for him right now. So, I just said that to say, the Wizards are one of those teams that, I think they may be better than people think. So, anyway, that's my take. See red, y'all.
You think that the Bulls will be better than the Suns that won 45 games last season? Listen, from your mouth to God's ears. If that ends up being the case, that ends up being the case. The East is going to be a gauntlet, right? And the Bulls are just going to have to leave it all out on the court every single night. That's really what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to leave it on the floor every single night and work their ass off for every win and scrap for every hit. And I think if Thiago gets every bit of the talent out this roster, maybe they can be better than a lot of us are expecting, right? Now, with the Trae thing, you're saying, well, Trae got the team to the ECF. Yeah, but then also his team was worse with him on the floor every year for the next 3 years after that. So that's what I mean. When you try to put it on a player that got you to the East, no, that team got to the Eastern Conference Finals, and Trae still has to prove that he can do it and actually get over that hump. That was during the time too where a lot of teams, every other year, there was a darling that went to the Eastern Conference Finals, right? So Trae still has a lot to prove. He ain't proved nothing yet. He still has a lot to prove. All right, let's get into this next voicemail, man. This one's from Broadway.
Yo, Haize, what up, gangster? This Broadway K at Lord of the Squad on Twitter. Wanted to run something by you. The Cleveland Cavaliers just acquired Peyton Watson. And then in addition to getting Peyton Watson, they also went after Cam Whitmore. Looks like they're shifting more towards like an athletic team. But where the Bulls come in this scenario, Jalen Tyson got benched in the playoffs. He was kind of out of the rotation. That's the guy who shot over 40% from three last year in Cleveland. I was wondering, what would you think about an Isaac Okoro and 2 second-round picks for Naquan Tomlin and Jalen Tyson? That would solve your shooting issues on the bench. Jalen Tyson, lightning rod shooter, really good rebounder, kind of like Max Strus in a way, but younger. So yeah, Naquan Tomlin is an energy guy. You can do that. So Naquan Tomlin and Jalen Tyson for Isaac Okoro, 2 second-round picks. The reason I'm thinking they might do that, the Cavs have no tradable first for the foreseeable future. So boom, that's one. Another trade you can do Isaac Okoro for Bryce Sensabaugh and take on the John Conchar contract. But you would probably have to include like 2 seconds still. So which trade do you think is better? And then my last point is, I think people don't understand if Modest Buzelis actually does take a leap, the Bulls are probably going to be good. Because you got to think, what kind of coincides with Buzelis' leap is Josh Giddey's numbers. If Buzelis is averaging about like 21 points a game, that means Josh Giddey is probably averaging 10 assists, right? So if he takes a Franz Wagner level leap, so let's say like we can't even count Buzelis as Buzelis. Let's say if we think of it like the Bulls had Franz Wagner. You got to think now the production is up. So you got 10 assists a game from your point guard, probably about 8 rebounds, and you got a forward getting about 21 a game. Then you got Claxton and Caleb Wilson, who I think can both average 12 points a game next year. So with that, I just think you have a nice mob. So just let me know what you think, man. Peace.
It seems like the Cavs are thinking about waiving Cam Whitmore. Like, that's why I covered it today, so we'll watch out for that. But you got to remember, the Cavs aren't taking Isaac Okoro back. We just got Isaac Okoro from him. They traded him after his career best season. They still traded him. They don't want him back, right? And then I highly doubt that you're going to get a player like Bryce Sensabaugh back for any type of trade involving Isaac Okoro. Plus, honestly, I'd almost rather wait out the Utah Jazz and restricted free agency in the summer for Bryce Sensabaugh because, you know, with all the kind of guards and everything that they have going on there, they're not going to be able to pay all those guys. I'd rather put a big offer sheet out on there and try to price them out. That's what I'd rather do when it comes to Bryce Sensabaugh, but I love the concept of Bryce Sensabaugh being on the team. I've been talking about it for like 3 months now. I love the idea of it. I just think that I'd kind of rather wait to restrict the free agency, but great thoughts there, Broadway. All right, let's get into this last voicemail, man. This one's from Shay.
What's up, Haize? It's Shay. Look, man, I'm not talking about now. I'm not talking about the next season. I'm not talking about the season after that, okay? But just say, for instance, Giddey is 23 now. When in 3 years he'll be 26. Modest is 21. In 3 years he'll be 24. Caleb Wilson in 3 years he'll be 22. So we'll probably be a playoff team by then in 3 seasons. And somebody and a big name free agent and a star player becomes a free agent in those next 3 years. A guy by the name of Anthony Edwards. I'm saying if, I'm not saying that this will happen, and he'll probably be looking for the max, but if he doesn't win a championship within the next 3 years of him being a part of that Minnesota Timberwolves franchise, I'm talking about 3 years from now, Haize, bringing him to the Chicago Bulls. Let's look at it. Modest will be 24. Giddey will probably be like 26 or 27. Caleb will be about 22. And you all know who else we'll be having on our roster at that time. We probably might have Jalen Duren. Basically everybody except for maybe Wilson will be in their prime. Would you consider bringing Anthony Edwards on this team if he's willing to take some kind of a less money to win a championship to win a championship to make this a better team, would you bring him to the Chicago Bulls? Not talking about now. I'm talking about in 3 years when his contract is up, and if he were to take less money to be on like a winning team, to be that piece to push them to like a conference to championship level team. I'm saying would you? Anyway, tell me what you think. Peace.
Shay, I'm gonna leave it at this. It doesn't matter if it's today, if it's next week, if it's a year from now, if it's 2 years from now, if it's 3 years from now. I don't care if God himself, if Jesus himself has come home. If Anthony Edwards wants to be a Chicago Bull, you find a way to go out there and make it happen. If we get ourselves up to a point over the next 3 years before he's a free agent, that we work ourselves up, that he looks at this team and says, I'm going to go to Chicago. I'm going to get that team I'm going to get that team over the top. We're going to be a championship team, and we're going to compete for titles for years. You do it. Period, point blank. You do it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's not a question. You ain't got to ask nobody. I think most of the Bulls Nation would agree. If Anthony Edwards at any point in the next 3 to 5 years wants to be a Chicago Bull, you go out there and get him. That's it. Period, point blank. You go out there, you get him, and then you figure out the rest later. If you can add him without subtracting, if you could add him to Giddey, Modest, Caleb Wilson, then who knows who our center is by then, you fucking do it. You do it. I don't give a damn. F those picks. I don't care if it takes 3 first-round picks to get it done. You do it. That's what you do. You do it. So, great way to end the voicemail. But if Anthony Edwards ever wants to be a Chicago Bull, you get him. Period, point blank. But that's going to do it for today's episode, y'all. Make sure you guys sound off down below in the comment section. Let me know how you guys think about all the list of possible free agents for the Bulls, the voicemails as well. Sound off down below on that one. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode at all, whether it's a live stream or whatever. You can follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.